The snow had fallen all night, thick as grief, until the Holloway cabin was nothing but a faint outline against the pale white morning. Martha stood at the window, her fingers gripping the edge of a faded baby blanket. The cradle beside her was empty now, two small hollows where her twins had lain just yesterday. The silence that filled the cabin felt alive, pressing on her chest until she could hardly breathe. Eli was outside, chopping wood though there was no need. The axe rose and fell in a rhythm too steady, too desperate. He didn't speak anymore, not since they'd laid the twins under the frozen earth at dawn. Martha had tried to pray, but the words had turned to frost in her throat. The wind moaned through the cracks like a mourning woman. When she closed her eyes, she could almost hear the babies breathing again, small sighs against the storm. Then a sound outside. Not the axe this time. Something softer, weaker. She opened the door and squinted into the blur of white. A shape stumbled through the snow, small, barefoot, the skin of his arms raw from cold. Before she could call out, he collapsed near the steps. "Eli!" she cried, and together they carried the boy inside. His body was half frozen, lips blue, breath barely there. He couldn't have been more than 10. Martha rubbed his hands between hers, whispering nonsense, the same soothing tones she'd used with her babies. When his eyelids fluttered, he murmured something, words strange and soft. "Taya," she thought he said before slipping back into sleep. By sundown, word had spread. In a town as small as Hollow Creek, there was no such thing as a secret. Clara Finch, the midwife, was the first to say it aloud. "The Holloways done lost their twins and taken in a savage. Ain't natural." The sheriff rode out before nightfall, his horse steaming in the cold. "Eli," he said quietly, removing his hat, "folks are talking. Saying you're replacing what the Lord took." Eli's jaw clenched. He said nothing. Martha stood behind him, pale but steady. "He's just a child," she said softly. "And it's cold." That night, when the house settled into uneasy quiet, Martha sat by the boy's side. The fire painted his face in gold and shadow. He stirred, eyes flickering open, dark as river stones. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, her grief, his fear. Then she reached out and smoothed his tangled hair. He flinched at first, then stilled. "You're safe now," she whispered. Days passed. The fever broke. The boy didn't speak again, but his eyes followed Martha wherever she went. When Eli went out to the barn, the boy would watch him too, cautious but curious. He ate little, worked hard at helping her sweep the floor or fetch water, as if repayment was something he understood instinctively. Outside, the whispers grew meaner. "That Holloway woman's gone soft in the head," Clara Finch told anyone who'd listen. "Talks to that heathen like he's her own flesh." Martha tried not to hear, but the gossip slithered in through cracks in the walls like the wind. Some nights she'd cry quietly, her hands twisting the baby blanket she refused to put away. Other nights, she'd hum old lullabies, soft things about rivers and starlight, and Taya would sit by the hearth, listening as if the songs meant something only his heart could translate. Eli watched this all with a silence sharper than words. He didn't stop her, but sometimes when she wasn't looking, his face would twist with something like jealousy, or maybe guilt. He worked harder, stayed out longer. The distance between them thickened. Then one evening he found something on the boy's cot, a small charm carved from bone, its edges worn smooth by time. The markings were familiar. Eli had seen them before on the weapons and ornaments of the Apache raiders who burned the valley wagons years ago. Men he'd fought, friends he'd buried. He turned the charm over in his hand, heart pounding. He looked toward the boy asleep near the fire, and then toward Martha, sewing quietly, the candlelight trembling across her face. For the first time, Eli wondered if mercy was a sin. Outside, the wind rose again, howling through the eaves like a voice that knew their names. The snow began to melt, turning the earth to gray slush, but the chill between Eli and the boy lingered like an unspoken curse. The house was quieter now, each sound too loud in its emptiness, the drip of thawing ice, the crack of wood, the slow, labored breath of a home that had forgotten laughter. Taya tried to help. He brought in kindling, fetched water, mended rope with small, steady fingers. But Eli's eyes followed him always, watchful, heavy with doubt. Martha could feel the distance growing between them, her husband on one side of grief, the boy on the other, and herself somewhere in between, trying to keep the cold from swallowing them all. Then one morning she woke to silence. The cot by the fire was empty. The door stood open, snow tracked across the floor. Eli was gone too. Her heart slammed in her chest. She ran outside, barefoot, her breath clouding in the frozen air. The trail led to the ridge beyond the creek. She followed it until her lungs burned, until she saw them. Eli standing with his back to her, the boy before him, small and still against the wind. "Eli!" she called, but her voice barely carried. He didn't turn. His gun hung loose at his side. "Tell me why you were out there that night," he said, his tone cracked and low. "Who sent you? You were close to the line of raiders once, weren't you?" The boy's lips parted, his voice faint. "No one, all gone." The wind took the rest. Eli stared at him for a long time, his jaw working, eyes rimmed red. The gun shook in his hand, and for a moment Martha thought she saw his grief made flesh, every buried fear, every half-healed wound. Then came the thunder of hooves. Sheriff Grant rode up the ridge, rifle in hand, breath ragged. "Eli, don't!" he shouted. "The town's riled. They think he's a scout, that his people are coming tonight." Martha's heart clenched. She stumbled forward, clutching her shawl against the wind. "Eli," she said, her voice trembling. "They said the same about our babies." "Called them God's punishment. Called me unfit for surviving when they didn't. Lies don't need truth, they only need mouths." Her words hung there, soft but sharp as ice. Eli's breath came heavy. The boy watched him, eyes shining, not with fear, but a strange, quiet knowing. Then Eli dropped to his knees, the gun slipping from his fingers into the snow. "I can't lose no more," he whispered. "Not again." Martha went to him, her hand finding his. Together they turned back toward the cabin as the sheriff looked on, saying nothing. That night the sky burned orange with torchlight. The mob came, shouting through the dark, fear wearing the mask of righteousness. But when they reached the Holloway place, they found the door swinging open, the hearth still warm, a pot half full of stew beside the dying fire. No one was there. By morning, the tracks led west. Clara Finch swore she saw them ride beyond the ridge. Martha wrapped in Eli's coat, the boy sitting between them on the horse. Others said they'd gone to return him to his people, or to build a new home where no one would judge mercy as weakness. Years passed. Seasons folded over the land like old quilts. The Holloway cabin caved in on itself, its wood silvered by rain and wind. The cradle remained, half buried in dust, a small relic of love that never fully died. And on quiet evenings, when the snow begins to fall again, travelers say they hear a woman's voice carried through the pines, a low hum, a lullaby in a language no one remembers. They say it sounds like forgiveness. Maybe that's what grace looks like out here. Unseen, unsung, surviving in the small spaces between sorrow and kindness. Maybe it isn't fire or thunder, but something quieter, a trembling hand that reaches out instead of turning away. The prairie remembers the Holloways not for what they lost, but for what they chose. Compassion in a world that punished it. And if you listen close, you might still feel it. The warmth that lingers long after the fire dies, the kind that comes only from those who keep loving, even in the snow.